Good evening and welcome to Watchmen on the Wall. Thank you for joining us. Today is Father's Day, so let me take this opportunity to wish all our fathers out there a happy Father's Day. Thank you for the time, commitment and passion you put into raising your children in the ways and admonition of the Lord. Tonight we speak to Michael Moll, a medical doctor, television personality, international speaker and businessman, about the important role of fatherhood in our nation. Fatherless homes is at the root cause of family breakdown and family dysfunction. We then also speak to Zane, Meas, an actor and national personality, about his ministry to restore fatherhood in our nation. Michael Moll, welcome to Watchmen on the Wall. Thank you for speaking to us. As a television personality and medical doctor, you travel a lot, but your main responsibility is father and husband.
Yeah. Some of the best advice I've ever been given, Errol, was just that. You know, Michael, you're replaceable. And it sounds like strange advice, but it was advice that really struck home, because whatever I do, and you talk about travel and you talk about business and all those roles, CEO and teammate and whatever the case is, you're always replaceable except in the role of father. There you're irreplaceable. No one's ever going to be a father to my kids. Yeah. And that makes it the most important role ever. Sorry, I'm interrupting your question, but I suddenly thought, man, I've got to throw it in there, Errol, because, yeah.
This is our Father's Day special. And,
well,
and that's a great way to start the interview anyway, that fathers are irreplaceable.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing in South African society is the breakdown of families, of marriages, having a devastating impact on our societies.
Yeah.
And a lot of the research is showing that the breakdown is coming mainly in fatherhood. And so I want to ask Michael Moll, what is your perspective on fatherhood?
So to pick up from where you left off then, Errol, society dysfunctional at the moment, and I think we both know and agree that the family is kind of the building blocks of society.
Right.
And in every family needs a head, and the father is meant to take on that role. And I think what's happened in South Africa is that fathers have abdicated from that role, either just by being absent, and that's physically absent, you know, they're just not there, or you know, your fathers who are there but are so tied up in business and their work and what they're doing, they're also not there, even though they're physically there. So I think that the root cause of the problem is absenteeism on a father's part. You know, a wife needs a companion. Kids need a dad to look up to just to fight with and to be told what to do and to have boundaries laid down. And in the absence of fathers taking responsibility for that role, a family can't thrive. A family can't be a wonderful building block for society. And so it is going to go awry and split up and divide and become dysfunctional.
Now that is widespread in our communities. I mean, all the research is showing that the dysfunctionality of families is mainly due to fathers abdicating that role, not being present in the home, or when they are, they're not fulfilling the mandate that God has given them. It's such an important mandate.
And can I just add in there, what happened in our country often took fathers away unwillingly from their families.
That's right.
And that's done huge damage. You know, fathers that might have wanted to be at home but just can't because they're traveling huge distances because the mines are taking them. And so it's not only a father's personal response or fault, if you like, it's often circumstantial that takes them away. Sorry, and I'll promise not to interrupt anymore, Errol.
No, that's fine. This is a great chat. The question I wanted to ask you, if you look at society today and the fact that so many men do not understand how vital their roles are as fathers, because obviously they're not fulfilling that properly, why do you think that is? Why do you think so many men are not fulfilling the role as the husband, as the father, running after, as you say, money, position, power, all of those kind of things? What have we lost, and when did we lose it?
I think the obvious answer to that is they just haven't had a father figure or a role model to model themselves on. You know, if I never had a dad, how am I going to be a dad to my kids? And as much of an excuse as that is, it shouldn't be an excuse. I mean, fatherhood is not difficult. It's engaging, it's loving, it's taking responsibility, it's being the head of the home. I mean, you don't need a book for that. In fact, if you did need a book, I'd be really worried, because there's a real sense of dads take the lead, be the man, take responsibility. I mean, and it's almost, I feel like I'm stumbling over my words and not giving a real answer, but it just seems so obvious that you just need to be there. Lead the company, lead the family, take charge. Don't let someone else do that. Don't let your kids do that. Don't leave that to your wife. Don't give her the responsibility of heading up the home just because you don't have the courage to do that.
Now, Michael, I mean, most of our viewers would know that you're a very busy man. You know, formerly you were the host of Top Billing. You're still doing a television program on the SABC. You're a medical doctor. You do all kinds of other things, but it's very obvious that you put a high premium on your role as a father and as a husband.
Sure.
Now, obviously, that was imparted to you by your dad, Dr. Arnold Mall. Tell us a little bit about him.
So, great father to have, wonderful role model. I did a crazy thing. He wrote a book on parenting. I mean, who does that?
Wow.
You know, I've never read the book, by the way. I read the man. You know, he's lived by example, which is great. And what my father did in terms of his approach to fatherhood was just, he said two things. If I can just accomplish two things in my kids by the time they leave home, it's simply this: I want them to have a relationship with God, first and foremost, and I want them to have a healthy self-image. And if armed with that, they can leave my home, then I've done my role as a father. And his involvement was active. He was engaged. He was busy. In fact, he got so busy at one point, my sister turned to my mom one day very innocently and said, "When's Dad coming to live with us again?" And a little honest, innocent remark like that got him to change jobs, to actually step down from a particularly significant job that he had, to take a lesser, smaller job, poorer pay, but to be there for the family. And I respect that. I admire that. I've had to do something similar in my own life. So very fortunate to grow up in a family with a strong father figure, strong values, strong role model, and a man that was there.
And obviously it also helped you understand who God is, because most children growing up need to see God in their father. And if the father doesn't express the love, care, and security of God, then children battle to understand that. So it's easier for you to know God and understand and love God and see Him as a loving father, because your father demonstrated that to you.
And how sad that there are so many children that will never know, will never experience the example of a father's love and not be able to relate to our Father in heaven that way. I mean, for me, fatherhood, what an amazing privilege, first and foremost, but a deeper understanding of the fact that my kids have been given to me by my father on loan, essentially. I mean, they're his kids, and he's just said to me, "You know what, Michael, I think you can look after these kids." I mean, what a huge responsibility. Dear God, I hope that I'm able to fulfill the task of fatherhood that you've given to me to the best of my abilities, because what an awesome responsibility.
If there's one thing that you could sort of set aside that your father taught you, that has helped you to be a better man, a better husband, a better father, what would that thing be?
Sure, it's a great question, Errol, and there's so much. You asked me to give you just one. It probably would be simply this: remember who you are. And he used to say it to us in little ways. You know, he wouldn't say, "Behave, be on your best behavior." He'd just say, "Hey, you're a mole. Remember who you are." And I mean, you can apply that to all aspects of life. You're one of God's children, forgiven, saved, grace all over you. Remember that. Live that way. You know, you're a father. Remember who you are. And you know, and you'd experience this well. In media, there is a natural tendency to start believing or people write about you, and getting this false sense of celebrity and self-worth, and I mean, look at me, and yet that advice kept ringing true. Remember who you are. So yes, I've been privileged to do a number of things and be a number of things in my life, but most importantly, I'm a husband. That's what I've been called to be. That's my chief role, is as dad. Remember who you are.
And that values were imparted to you by a great dad.
Yeah.
You also sounds like a great role model, and you are a great role model, because people in the media often are not great models, unfortunately.
It's hard to be in the media. It's hard to be in the public eye all the time and have your life, on billboards. So I can understand some of the struggles that my fellow counterparts go through.
But how important do you think it is, especially today in today's culture, to be a good role model to young people?
Wow. I think role models are vitally important, but I don't think the role models of today that kids should be looking up to set out to be role models. I don't get up in the morning and think, okay, Michael, be a good role model. No, I think for me, it's God, this is who you made me, this is who I am, and I'm going to wear my heart on my sleeve, whether it's at the breakfast table, the boardroom, or in the bike race. Whatever the situation, this is who I am, remember who you are, and be that. So, role model for me, wonderful, and if you say that, great, I thank you for that, but it's not something that I try to be or focus on. This is who I am, this is who God made me, and I'm just living out what He's created me to be, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that the advice your father gave you, remember who you are, is what grounds you. It's what makes you a great role model, because wherever you go, and like you say, you're in the media, and people know you, and all of those kind of things, but what grounds you is that just profound piece of advice. Remember who you are.
And your kids, they would ground you. I mean, you can come off having gotten some huge award, and there's accolade, and you just feel on top of the world, and then your son comes and spends some time with you in the office, and he goes home with his mom, and he says, Mom, I can't wait till I'm a dad, because it's so easy. I mean, and this is my 5-year-old, said these words, school is so hard these days, and when I become a dad, I just sit and type words onto a screen. It's easy.
So that's his view.
That's his view, man.
So Michael, South Africa, we're facing enormous challenges. The family paper that government put out, the Social Development Department, shows us that single-parent families are more than the two-parent biological family. And it's a sad state of affairs in South Africa, and the impact of that on South African society has been devastating. We see all kinds of social ills. You trace just about everything back to the breakdown of a family. You're living in South Africa most of your life. You see what's happening in society. What is your advice to men out there? Because a lot of the time when I speak at men's conferences, even at women's conferences, you get a lot of good advice from women. It always comes back to the issue of men failing in the home, failing in society. And to reverse this trend, obviously we need men to begin to realize that it lies with them, the responsibility to turn this around. What would your advice be to men?
2 things. To the men out there, don't be an idiot, stop being a boy. And let me explain that to you, because that seems a bit harsh. We might need to cut that thing. So, the word idiot, it actually comes from an original, from the ancient Greek democracy. And an idiot referred to a person who was characterized by self-centeredness, that was overwhelmed or only concerned with private affairs, not public affairs. So to the fathers out there, to the men, I'm saying, don't be an idiot. It's not about you. Stop being so self-centered about my ambition, my freedom, my way. You have a responsibility. And that leads to the second point, is stop being a boy. For me, the difference between a boy and a man is not age, it's not wealth, it's not wisdom, it's not insight, it's responsibility.
That's
the
right.
day you man up and say, I am going to take responsibility for my actions. If I've started a family, I'm going to be that dad in the family. It comes down to responsibility between a boy and a man. there are so many boys running around in South Africa today with kids and families in tow. We don't need boys in this country. We need men.
Yes, we do. And I think that's going to solve a lot of our problems when men realize that God has placed an awesome responsibility on them. Firstly in their marriages, and then for their families, their children, and society as a whole. But one of the statistics that is tragic that has come out is divorce. Divorce, almost one in 3 people get divorced. Most divorces happen before the 10th or 9th year of marriage. And so we've come into this, we've created this disposable sort of culture. If it doesn't work for me, just move on, get somebody else. And that of course has caused a lot of devastation. But the tragedy is that divorce in the church is almost the same as the world. And again, if I can ask you the question, why do you think this is happening? Because marriage is sacred, it's holy, it's a holy institution that God has given us. It's the glue that holds society together, but we've lost that in the church. Why do you think that is?
I think it comes down to what we talked about earlier, self-centeredness.
Even in the church?
Even in the church, but particularly in marriage. You talk about marriages falling apart because of self-centeredness. What am I getting out of this marriage? Why aren't my needs being met? Why don't you, you're not meeting my expectations. And we know that the love that Jesus talked about was a love that put others' needs before yours.
That's right.
It's you first and then me. And that's an active love. It's not a passive love. So I really do think that I suppose self-centeredness. And ultimately, if you look at self-centeredness and you take it to the very root of it, it's pride. It's me first above all else. It's the original sin. It's the whole reason that we got separated from God is pride.
You think we're not preaching enough in our churches about this issue? We're not helping men and women understand the value and the sanctity of marriage and its impact on society?
I can't speak for churches in general. In the church that I go to, we tackle issues, all issues that impact on life. From family to sex to drinking, you name it, there's nothing that's taboo. And what a privilege to be in a church like that. Do all churches do that? I'm not sure. I don't think so. And if they did, I think there would be less issues around divorce. But at the end of the day, what you hear from the pulpit is not necessarily going to impact what happens at home. And I think what happens at home is between a husband or wife and our Heavenly Father. That cord of 3 strands, that imagery that the Bible talks about wasn't just cutesy and pretty. That's the root of marriage.
And coming back to fatherhood, our Father's Day special, again, looking at society and the breakdown and the chaos because fathers are not playing their role. What can, even the media, a lot of people blame the media for what is happening in families today, where the role of the father is undermined. The father's portrayed in soapies
the
and
goofy dad.
Correct. And that is undermined, where the mom always knows better, the kids, and that role has been undermined. How do we change that, Michael? I mean, how do we use media to change that fatherhood is actually vital. It's given by God, and it's a key and anchor responsibility in society.
Sure. Isn't that the question, Errol? And I think it's going to be hard to change a mindset that has taken years and years. I mean, we're talking from the 60s already with the whole women's lib movement.
That's right.
That tried to equate women with men, and all they really did was just take away a man's roles and responsibilities. And you emasculate men, and men have just, instead of doing something about it, just stepped back and said, well, if you don't want me to be a man, I'm not going to be a man. You ask why we have so many, so many males today and so few men, because women have asked us to be women, not men in that sense. So, wow, that's it. I'm trying to come back to your original question, which was what, Errol? Sorry.
How do, even using the media, the church, how do we put that responsibility and the sanctity of fatherhood back into men? I know that the media has emasculated men. I know that just the culture is that fathers are not necessary, men are not necessary. There's women that have written and said, we don't need a man. We can have a child and raise that child on our own. Why do we need a man? But God says you need a man in the home.
Yeah.
And I think that is where the breakdown is coming, is people are rejecting God. And when they reject God, they reject his statutes and his principles. And fatherhood being an important part of that.
Yeah.
And so how do we restore that?
Well, I think what you're doing now is part of that, is just slowly speaking into fatherhood. And maybe what I said right in the beginning about fatherhood is simple, it's easy, be there, be the dad. It's not as simple as that. Maybe men do require some instruction from the pulpit. Maybe men do require regular interactions with other men to say, this is what it takes to be a dad. This is what it takes to be a man. These are the responsibilities that we expect from fathers. And maybe there needs to be a serious push from the church's perspective to say, let's raise up a future generation of fathers. And you know what? As harsh as it may sound, let's not start with the current fathers, because we're a bit late on that. Let's start with boys who are not yet fathers. Let's teach them how they should be treating their sisters and how they should be treating their moms, so that by the time they leave home, or by the time they start to ask girls to marry them, they know what it means to be a dad, despite not possibly having a father figure as a role model.
You see, we still come back to the issue of role modeling. Because what I found out in research is that men teach their children and their sons, they teach them by telling them to do certain things, but they themselves don't do it. So they fail in the example. And I think, and in the church as well, we do need role models, better role models, and more role models in the pulpit, in the churches, as Christian leaders. We need it in government, because there's a lot of failure there. And what people see in government, what people see in the church, what people see in the media, they begin to emulate. They follow that trend. You know, you've got pastors divorcing their wives, marrying another woman, and continuing in the church like nothing happened. And so everybody says, well, fine, if he can do that, it must be okay. But you know what? It's not okay. It's not okay. God still hates divorce. And fatherhood, I think the most important part of fatherhood is staying married. And staying, and somebody gave me this advice many years ago. And he said to me, you know, it's the best thing you can do for your children.
To love your wife.
Give them a good education, all of these things. Yes, no, love their wife, love their mother. Sorry, love your wife, love their mother. And show it, demonstrate that. And that was a life-changing experience for me, because it is so true that the more I love my wife, I create a loving, stable environment in my home, and it's the best environment for children to grow up. You can't give them anything else than that. You agree with that?
And what a great role model as a dad, to just love your wife.
Simple.
With that unconditional love.
Simple.
I mean, I think James Dobson said that your kids will probably remember 3 or 4 things you ever told them, but they'll never forget how you lived. So let your actions speak far louder than your words.
Yeah, and Michael, I want to thank you for being a great role model. I love the article, by the way, in the Joy magazine, the front cover article.
Yep.
I think we need more like that. We need more well-known people to stand up and say, I put a premium on being a husband and a father. And I challenge you to do the same, because it's important to me. And people look at that, and perhaps they see you on television and magazines and all over the show, and might say, I never knew that about Michael. I didn't know that, you know, he puts a premium. He regards marriage and family as the most important things in his life. He's all over the show. And if more men, well-known men, celebrities, would stand up and say that, you know, I love my vocation and my celebrity status and everything I do, but you know what's most important is being a husband to my wife and a father to my children. I think we can begin to change society's understanding and change culture that way, more men. So I want to thank you for doing that.
Absolute pleasure. I mean, it's a no-brainer. Like I said earlier, as a dad, you're irreplaceable. No one ever is going to be a father to your kids. I want to stand before my Father in heaven, and I want to look at my kids and say thank you for bringing my kids to be with me. I mean, that, for me, that would be just phenomenal.
Absolutely.
So that's what I'm working towards.
Yeah. Me too. That's the thing I learned, that, You know, you can make a lot of excuses for a lot of things, but the one thing you can't is your children. You're responsible for them. They are going to become what you raise them to be. It's as simple as that. Kids are the product of their families, of their mom and their dad, and you can't get away with that. You can blame the media, you can blame the schools, you can blame everything, but God knows that the ultimate responsibility lies with the dad and the mom, but more importantly, the dad.
The dad gives an account for the mom, yeah.
Absolutely. Interestingly, in the Bible, in Ephesians, the Bible commands men, it says, fathers, raise your children in the admonition of the Lord. Do not exasperate them. It doesn't say mothers, it says fathers. And I always pointed out
we'll give an account. Oh, we will, man.
Absolutely. So, Michael, thank you for talking to us.
Pleasure.
Inviting us into your beautiful home, and we wish you well in your fatherhood and in your vocation.
And from one dad to another, happy Father's Day.
Thank you. God bless you. Welcome back to the program. I'm speaking to Zane Meas, the director and founder of the Fatherhood Foundation of South Africa and a well-known television personality. Zane, welcome to the program, and thank you for speaking to us at Watchmen on the Wall.
Thank you very much for having me, Errol. Great to be on the show.
So today is Father's Day, Zane, and I want to talk to you about, besides the ministry that you have, the Fatherhood Foundation, about your experience with fatherhood in South Africa.
Well, Errol, you know, the reason why I started the Fatherhood Foundation of South Africa was because of the lack of strong male and father figures in our society today. The Fatherhood Foundation was birthed when I did some research and found out that 2/3 of our homes are single-parent homes or child-headed households. 2/3. And that means more kids are growing up without fathers than kids who are growing up without a father figure in their homes. And this is what is causing all the social problems in our country today. So the Fatherhood Foundation was established to speak to the issues around fatherlessness, but also the solutions to it.
So, Zane, did you grow up in a home with a strong father figure?
I did. I grew up with come from a big family, 7 kids. And my dad was in my life and a very strong and positive influence in my life, but he died when I was 14. And I was fortunate enough in my formative years after that, after my dad passed away, to have had strong male role models in my life.
Yeah, that's very important.
That's an important issue around fatherhood. Father figures aren't necessarily your biological fathers. It can be your older brother, it can be your uncle, it can be your grandfather, it can be the teacher, the youth pastor, it can be the pastor. As long as people, boys and girls, have a strong male role model in their life, a father figure, then I think that's a positive.
Yeah. Now, Zane, international research, even by secular institutions, support what you're saying, that the breakdown of family, fatherless homes is the root of all of the social ills in society. And fathers not playing their roles in their homes, not being good husbands, not being good fathers, is the cause for societal dysfunctionality. And so the answer then must be, if we can restore the role of the father, we can restore society.
That is what I believe. That is really what I believe. You know, Errol, there's such a strong demand for women in the workplace today. 6 of our premiers were women.
That's right.
The governor of the Reserve Bank is a woman. The person in charge of the police is a woman. The person in charge of the army was a woman. This is before this current elections we just had. So there was a strong demand for women, and this sends a message to the man on the street. The man on the street then begins to wonder, do I, as a man, still have a role to play? Now, I have no problem with gender equality. Don't get me wrong. I believe women are just as capable as men. But I believe that the government is pushing our society ahead of where we can comfortably be socially. So they've almost outgrown the man on the street. It sends the wrong message to the man on the street. He begins to wonder, does he still have a role to play? Is he still important? What is his role now? And my message when I go around and speak to people is, yes, man, you do still have a role to play. You are still important. God's order has never changed. That's an important thing that we must understand, that there is a spiritual order to our roles here on earth, and that is God's order.
Now, Zane, the emasculation of men is a debate we're not really having. But do you think the media, the popular media, has a great role to play in that?
I think so. I think when you look at you know, one doesn't want to typify or generalize, But if you look at how women are being pushed, even in movie roles, I already spoke about government and all of that kind of thing. But also this push to equality, this new women's lib thing that women are just as capable as men. Nowhere has it ever been said that women are not as capable as men. But we see the media, we see news reporters, we see television programs, we see sitcoms, etc., pushing this idea that women can play a role equal to men. Yes, they can to a certain extent, but there is something innate in a man that God has placed there. You see, sometimes we neglect the spiritual aspects of our gender. There's something that God has placed in a man that a woman does not have, and that is vital for the development of children and for the development of the family and society. And I think this is what people are missing. They're pushing the gender issue so much that they are forgetting that important role that the man is playing, and that quality that he brings to a family, to a home.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you, because you raised this important issue about the effectiveness of a man in a home being a husband and a father. And of course, you're a husband before you were a father. I want to ask you this. Do you believe that a man can be a mediocre, sort of lousy husband, but still be a good father?
You know what? I believe that when God said to a man that you will leave your mother and your father and you will cling to your wife and the two shall become one, that is a very, very, very powerful command. That is a very powerful imagery that God is placing for us to see and understand. You cannot be an effective parent unless you include your wife. You cannot be an effective parent as a mother if you include the husband. And this is why women are finding so many problems today, is that they're bringing up kids by themselves. And I always say this, let me just, before I answer your question, Errol, I always say this to single mothers. I always say, for your daughters, you'll be a good role model. You'll be a good mother. But you cannot teach your son to be a man. You can teach him to be a good gentleman, to have good manners, etc., etc., etc. But to teach him manliness or maleness or manhood, unfortunately, that is not possible. That's right. You know, as much as you, and there are lots of kids who come out of single-parent homes who turn out to be great men. I'm not saying because you come from a single-parent home, you're lost. But I am saying that as a single mother, you cannot teach. You've got to find a strong male role model for him. Similarly, for a man, you cannot be an effective father if you don't have the support and the codependence of your wife next to you. You know, kids today, they always see who is the weaker parent. My kids do that. They know I'm the softie. My wife is the disciplinarian, and I'm the softie. They know they can go to daddy when they want something, or they want something, you know, they need to go somewhere, or they need money or sweets or something. Daddy, can I have something? They come to me. But I've had to learn that I would first say to them, what did your mother say? Because I know they're coming to me as a second resort. And if mommy said no, then unfortunately, I've got to stand with mommy and say no at this point. When the husband and the wife become one, there's a powerful unity and a powerful strength. 1 Peter 3:7 says this. He says, remember that you are co-heirs of the grace of God.
That's right.
Co-heirs. Not a man on his own, not a woman on his own. Co-heirs. Together you will experience God's grace, his strength. Ecclesiastes speaks about the triple braided cord, you know, not easily broken. Can any two walk together lest they are in agreement? These are important biblical principles that come to a marriage, that come to couples, that come to parenthood. We can't ignore them.
Zane, I think one of the most important pieces of advice I've learned as a young Christian was this: the greatest gift you can give your child is to love their mother and to show that love openly. Would you agree with that?
Wholeheartedly, wholeheartedly. For a boy, you are then showing the kind of love that he will have to show his wife, and that it's okay to be affectionate. You know, I believe for men, we've got this skewed view of what manhood is today, that we're not allowed to show affection, we're not allowed to cry, we're not allowed to say, I love you. Where do we get this from? We've learned it from somewhere. So when you show affection to your wife, when you tell your wife, baby, I love you, and you kiss her in front of the kids and you hold her, and you know, you play all those games where the kids go, oh, please, not here, just get a room, people, and that kind of thing. Yet you are relaying, you are imparting something to those children. Similarly for your daughter, she goes, I want a man like this who will love me like this one day. So yes, by loving your wife right, you are certainly, you're building the family bond. You're rebuilding what lots of kids are missing today.
And Zane, I must agree with you when you talk about the women's liberation movement and its impact on the family. Because that movement was started by a woman by the name of Gloria Steinem, and she famously quipped that women need men like fish need bicycles. And I think that summarized or summed up the thought process of this movement, is that women can make it without men. There are many women that can do very well without men, but not in the context of the family. And I agree with you that there are single women raising children and doing an outstanding job of raising their children. But never mind how good they are at doing that, they can never be the man. They can never be a man. They can never be the father figure that a child needs. And so you put a lot of value on fatherhood because you obviously have done research, you've known, and you've got a ministry that is helping people understand that. So Zane, what do you think are some of the major reasons our society is breaking down and that men are abdicating this role and responsibility of fatherhood?
Let's start at the very foundation, Errol. The definition of fatherhood. What is the definition of fatherhood? And this will then tell us why fatherhood is so important. It is not my definition. You can look it up in the dictionary. You can look it up in the Vine's biblical dictionary. You can look it up anyway, what the definition of a dad, a father is. And the definition is, he is the founder of a lifestyle. He is the source. He is the root. He is the seed. He's the anchor. He's the stone pillar. Look at all those definitions. Look at all those words that describe dad, anchor, source, root, founder. In other words, he's the foundation. I get so angry when people try and take the fatherhood element out of God. You know, there's a movement going around the world where they want to retranslate the Bible and take out all God Father. They just want to call God God. And he's this androgynous, misty person, you know. They want to take the Father, and that is incorrect. That is incorrect. Father is the founder of a lifestyle. He's the source. God is the source of all things. Every tree, every star that you look at in the planet, every plant, every animal comes from God. Everything that is here is made by him. The book of John says nothing is not made but that he made it. He made it. Nothing came just through evolution or whatever. God is the creator of all things. And that is the same qualities that we as fathers have. We set the tone in the house. We set the atmosphere in the house. Have you seen when dad comes home angry and then mommy says, "Ooh, listen here, I can see your father's in a bad mood. Just put the music soft. He's in the mood again," you know? Mommy came here angry. It's not quite the same thing. When fathers come home in a good mood, there's a happy atmosphere. When fathers are good fathers, there's a good atmosphere in the house. When fathers are bad fathers, there's a bad atmosphere. When fathers are absent, there's a fear. I told someone at work about how fathers bring a strength to a home. And she said she grew up with a grandfather and a grandmother. And when a grandfather was not in the house, they would lock the doors, they would close all the windows and lock themselves in the bedroom. But when grandfather was home, they slept with the windows open, and because they knew there was a male presence in the house. There's a certain strength in the house.
Yeah. And
that's what kids are missing today. They're not sleeping right because there's no father in the house. There's no founder. There's no root. There's no atmosphere. You can't escape this. I don't care which women's organization you're from. I don't care what you are proposing and purporting. But I'm saying to you, inbuilt in a man, there's a quality that God has placed there that we cannot ignore.
And fathers are called by God to represent the father heart of God. I mean, that is the most vital role. Now, Zane, you've written a book about fatherhood, and we want to talk a little bit about that book and how to get that out to restore this vital role of fatherhood in society. But we're going to a break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about your book. Welcome back. I'm speaking to Zane Meas, the founder and director of the Fatherhood Foundation of South Africa. Zane, we've been talking about the vital role of fatherhood in South Africa and some of the reasons for the breakdown of fatherhood in society. But you've written a book called Daddy Come Home. Tell us about that book and what was the purpose for writing it.
That's right, Errol. I have a copy of the book right here. This is what it looks like. You can get it in bookstores, CNA, exclusive books, Kum bookstores, Gospel Direct. So it's in the secular and the Christian bookstores as well.
Okay.
The message of this book is basically exactly answering the question that we raised earlier. Do men still have a role to play? And yes, they do. That is the vital answer to the age-old question that men are asking, and especially in South Africa today. You do have a role to play. But the place that you have to play it more importantly is at home. That is your greatest place of influence is in the home. You know, Paul writes to Timothy, he says, Timothy, if a man wants to be a deacon or an elder or a leader, he first has to be a man who rules over his own home and has the respect of his wife and children. And that is something that the people, our clergy miss, the people in the church miss, and people in leadership miss, is that they want to go and be great leaders in society and at business and in church and so on. And yet they don't reign over their houses and have the respect of their wife and their children. And so therefore it's important for them to understand that before you can go and be somebody in society, you first need to be somebody at home. Your children need to respect you. Your wife needs to respect you. You know, I've seen so many instances where men get up in church and they start praying and the wife goes, is that your father? Because he doesn't even pray at home. Here he's praying in the church. You know, at a community event, dad is getting up and speaking up on stage and they're going, the man can't even say 2 words to us at home because he just sits in front of the TV the whole time and reads the paper. And here he is making a speech in public. You don't want that situation. That is why Paul had to write to Corinthians and say that some women must just sit in church. And that was the reason why I wrote that.
Yeah, I think, Zane, that's a very important point that we're raising that, because that is a problem in the church and obviously in civil society as well, in that that the disconnect between what we say and what we do as fathers. And I think, again, somebody once said to me, I think it was about 15 years ago, he made this remark, and I couldn't believe how true it was, or that I've never thought of it myself, is that a man is nothing more than what he is in his family, in his home.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's nothing more than that, because, you know, as men we chase titles and money and cars and power and position and all of those things. And then we tend to ignore the most vital roles that God has given us, and that is the husband and the father of our children. And I've heard so many men say this, that, you know, if a man fails in his home, he's failed. It doesn't matter how popular you are in the media or in church or wherever. If you failed at home, you failed. And I think we've missed that because of the media culture. Being popular, having lots of money, all of those things appear to matter more than your role as a father and a husband. You agree with that?
I absolutely do. I know so many fathers who, unfortunately, listen, I'm in that same position. I'm on one of the most popular shows on television, Seven de Laan. I've written a book. We've made a movie behind us, Father. I've done so many things. And I sometimes wonder if this isn't too much for my kids to live up to, you know? It kind of frightens them that, yes, my father's done so many things. Well, I have to be able to do the same type of stuff. And I tell them, listen, you just go and be your own person. I'm proud of you no matter who you turn out to be or whatever you decide to do in life. I'll still be proud of you. I'm your dad. You know, I love you unequivocally. But unfortunately, some people put too high a price on that. That's what they want to attain, and they do that. There's a chapter in this book called The Adulterous Father. It's not about a dad having an affair with a woman. It's about dads who spend too much time at work or at church and then neglect their own families. That is what that chapter is about. But Errol, you spoke about the roles of a dad. In this book also there's a chapter called The Prophet, the Priest, and the King in the House. These for me are the guidelines to being a good dad. This book deals with some of the problems that we experience in South Africa in particular. This book is written for South African men, by the way. It speaks about the problems we're having in South Africa in particular, but also what solutions we can find. And some of those solutions are from our cultural traditions. The Zulu culture, the Sotho culture, even the San and the Bushman culture. These are important cultures that we can look at and look at some of the early cultural practices that dealt with family, and how unfortunately that has been twisted for financial gain or to have a gender hold on the women and that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, you know, patriarchal societies have come on and so on. But if we go back to the way God called it to be, to the way these cultures initially had it, then there is something to learn from that and something that we can pull into the future and say, let's use some of that. So that is what all of these things this book tackles.
Zane, we're talking about the church. Do you think the church is doing enough to restore the role of fatherhood in society, helping to teach people and focusing on this massive and growing problem in our society?
You know, Errol, I must be honest with you that a lot of the focus of what I've been doing whenever I get invited to churches is to speak about the fatherhood role of the church in today's society. I have been forced to bring that message in that way, sometimes in a very castigating and judgmental way to some ministries who place too much emphasis on the prosperity gospel and upon uplifting the pastor as if he is himself the head of the church. You know, and coming back to saying to the men, love your wives even as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. And telling pastors that this is what they need to do, to go back to the original plan of how church was meant to be. Church was meant to serve the society, not society serve the church. And unfortunately, God has called upon me to start speaking to churches and pastors in particular about being good shepherds again. Going back and looking at being good shepherds. Isaiah and Ezekiel speaks about how the shepherds have been using the sheep for financial gain and abusing the sheep and letting the sheep go astray. And now the sheep are lost because the shepherds have taken the primary role, whereas the shepherd is there and he's supposed to be looking after the sheep. And unfortunately, a lot of our churches have gone this route. And to our shame, we have to say, not all of them, of course. Not all churches are bad, but some churches have just gone way, way, way off. And God has also called me to bring this message to the churches to say, listen, come back to how God has called you to be. Go back to your first love and think what God called you to be. Go back to the Father heart of God and preach that. Yeah. You know, when they asked Jesus to teach them to pray, the disciples, he started with our Father.
That's right.
And that is where the focus needs to be, on our Father.
Now, Zane, I think everybody will agree that the family and the role of family is so vital to society. It is the building block of society. And of course, marriage is the cornerstone of society. It's the glue that holds society together. And when marriages break down and families break down, everybody suffers as a result of that. Now, because the family is the most fundamental unit, when families break down, as they are doing in South Africa, it affects the church, it affects government, it affects all aspects of society because dysfunctionality spreads, social ills, teen pregnancies, alcohol addiction, drug addiction, all can be traced back to the breakdown of the family. How do we put the focus back on the family as a society, help people understand that, you know, with families breaking down, with all the government programs that we have and the money we're throwing at it, it's not going to do any good unless we get back to restoring the family, and most importantly is that position and role of the father at the head of that family.
I know, Errol, that is the question for the ages. And let me tell you that is also, we speak about the separation of church and state. But unfortunately, to heal society from its evils, the state is going to have to step in. And there are programs. We have a minister for women. The government has set up this platform for women to raise their issues and for women to be elevated. What about the men? I think government should start having a policy where men are also addressed, and particularly men who are fathers. You spoke earlier about you first become a husband and then a father. Unfortunately, in society today, 60% of the births that happen are single-parent births. So men become fathers first before they become husbands. This needs to be addressed, I believe. And we're not being puritanical and old school and, biblical principles. Come on, people can live together. Yes, I know this is what society demands, but this is also why we have teenage pregnancy and child rapes and rape of women and that kind of thing. Because there is a breakdown in society, as you have rightly mentioned. Thank goodness for organizations like the Family Policy Institute and other organizations that are there that are trying to address these issues. And we, Errol, I know you do, I get a lot of flack because I use a biblical principle for it. Yeah. People say to me, but it's a social problem. Why are you bringing the Bible into it? I'm saying, Miles Monroe does a beautiful thing. He says, listen, if something is wrong with the product, you go to the manufacturer and you ask the manufacturer, Where's the handbook to tell me how to fix this product?
That's right.
We are simply products. We are products. We are creations of the Creator. And He's written a book. So we go to that book and we have a look at what that book says about how men should behave. And I'm not talking about stoning women who sleep around. I'm not talking about Old Testament. People throw this at me. Yeah, but the Old Testament says if a woman commits adultery, she should be stoned, etc. This is what was going to happen in Sudan and these other places, India and all of that. I'm saying I'm not talking about that. You people attack us on these kind of things. But I'm saying I am going back to the role of how God wanted man to be. I spoke earlier about the order of God. And God's order is God, Jesus, man, woman. That's a spiritual order.
That's right.
The woman is not above Jesus. Jesus is not above God. There's a spiritual order that God has placed for us to follow. And if we follow that, I'm not saying women must be walking 3 steps behind the husband and carrying his thing and all of that. I'm saying the spiritual order. I always admonish men about this. You are not the boss of the house. It's not the boss. You are not the king, what you say doesn't count. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a spiritual order that God has placed there for our good.
That's
not so that He can get the glory, for our good. It's to help us, society, function properly.
Yeah.
That is what it's about.
Yeah, the fatherhood role it's a headship and it's a role of responsibility. The man has the ultimate responsibility to take care of his wife and his children, to bring order, security, to provide. So it's not like I'm the boss and you listen to me. But Zane, also, if you look at just the high levels of violence and abuse against women and children in South Africa, one can attribute the emasculation of men and just this whole obliteration of the role of men and the importance in society to that. Men are acting, many of them, like animals. That's what's happening in our society. 4-month-old babies being raped by adult men in South Africa. There's something horribly wrong in our society. And I think what you're doing with the Fatherhood Foundation, the Work Family Policy Institute is doing, and a number of churches, is trying to address this issue that we've got to restore marriage between a man and a woman as a value. We've got to restore the family, and of course, we've got to restore the man to the pinnacle and that position as the head of the marriage, the head of the family, and a leader in society if we're going to heal and restore our society. But Zane, we've run out of time. I want to thank you for joining us. Watchmen on the Wall, thank you for your incredible, important ministry, the Fatherhood Foundation. Thank you for the work you do on television, all your communication efforts to get this important, vitally important message out, that fathers and men in society need to stand up and fulfill their biblical roles as the prophet and the priest and the king in their homes. That's the only way we're going to restore society.
Errol, thank you so much for having me, and I wish you as well all of the best with the Family Policy Institute and with this program. And I hope that our viewers will go away understanding their importance. I always say this to men, never ever underestimate your importance. And if there's one thing they take away from today's viewing episode, it is that men don't underestimate your importance.
Amen. I agree with that. Good night, and thank you, Zane Meas. That's our show for tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember to go to our website, www.familypolicyinstitute.com. Click on the subscribe button, fill in your name, surname, and email address. And once you've submitted that, you will receive a weekly Watchmen on the Wall newsletter that will help keep you updated about the issues we face. You can also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter. Please remember also that the latest edition of Joy magazine is now available at retail stores across the country. Make sure you get your copy. Thank you for joining us tonight. God bless you. And remember, keep standing.